All right, everybody, it is 7:30 p.m. I'd like to call this Monday meeting of the Warren Astronomical Society to order. We will not be able to do the normal sort of a roll call because many of our participants are on YouTube and cannot speak directly to us, but I see a lot of you here on the WebEx, quite a few other people on YouTube. I'd like to thank you all for coming, even if only virtually, and hope that everybody out there is doing well. And I'd like to especially thank everybody on the board and our veteran members who have helped us set up this virtual meeting so that we can have astronomy together in a time of crisis. At this point, I'd like to follow the normal format. We're going to be doing in the news, officer reports, observing reports, do a short talk. We'll have a little bio break after the short talk, not as long as normal. So you can grab your favorite snack, drink, do whatever you need to do. Then we'll come back and do the feature presentation. During the presentation, everybody will be muted. There is a chat function on WebEx, and there are questions on YouTube that will be monitored by Jonathan, our publications director. So if you want to make comments, ask questions, Jonathan will be able to relay to those of us running the meeting. So at this point, we're going to turn things over to Dale Teamy. He is our In the News volunteer for the night. So Dale, if you could grab the presenter's ball from me and take it away.
This is In the News for April 6, 2020. Globular clusters are clues to a galactic crime scene. An analysis of globular clusters gives clues to the Milky Way's criminal past. Astrophysicist Duncan Forbes of Swinburne Observatory in Australia used these clues from past events to reconstruct our cosmic neighborhood's history. Forbes says the Milky Way went cannonball on neighboring dwarf galaxies no fewer than 5 times. Roughly half the 200 clusters studied by Forbes had angular momentum that indicated an origin outside the Milky Way. While the age and composition of these clusters have long been known, the ESA-GAIA satellite has now provided the information on their spin or angular momentum, thereby giving Forbes the evidence he found conclusive. Forbes intends to study the Andromeda Galaxy now, next for evidence of similar crimes. We look forward to other researchers following up on his hypotheses. Scientists at the Center for Astrophysics, Harvard and Smithsonian announced on Friday the detection of J2322 plus 0509, a detached binary white dwarf composed of 2 helium-core stars with a short orbital period. It is the first gravitational wave source of its kind ever detected. Theories predict that there are many double helium-core white dwarf binaries out there, but this is the first confirmed. The binary was a challenge to detect because it is oriented face-on to us like a bullseye, rather than edge-on. The star will be used for verification on the much-anticipated LISA, the Laser Interferometer Space Antenna, gravitational wave observatory planned for launch in 2034, says Dr. McCurman Keelik from the University of Oklahoma, and a co-author on the study. Verification binaries are important because we know that LISA will see them within a few weeks of turning on the telescope, said Keelik. There's only a handful of LISA sources that we know of today. The discovery of the first prototype of a new class of verification binary puts us well ahead of where anyone could have anticipated. On a positive note, the much-delayed James Webb Space Telescope successfully deployed its massive, multi-part primary mirror into the configuration it will use in space. The JWST fully extended and lashed a 6.5-meter mirror for the first time in a clean room at Northrop Grumman Space Systems in Redondo Beach, California. Special gravity offsetting equipment was attached to the mirror to simulate the zero gravity environment its mechanisms will have to operate in when it is deployed. The telescope is currently scheduled to launch in 2021. SpaceX. Third time wasn't the charm. Once again, a SpaceX fully reusable Starship prototype has failed during cryogenic proof testing. The SN3's failure was caught on video which appears to show a leak and then collapsing. The cryogenic proof test consists of the vehicle's fuel tanks being filled to capacity with nitrogen and sometimes oxygen that is cooled to cryogenic temperatures. This test is carried out after an ambient pressure test where the vehicle is filled with gas at room temperature to see if it can handle the kinds of pressure conditions it will experience during flight. In response to previous failures, SpaceX founder Elon Musk said that these types of failures are expected during load tests and would provide information vital to the construction of future prototypes. In fact, the design of the SN3 incorporated lessons learned from the two previous vehicles. Responding to this latest setback, Musk said it was the result of incorrect commanding resulting in the loss of pressure, as opposed to any material issue with the Starship build. The SN4 is already under construction. Going from the news to in the sky, what we can look forward in the coming weeks. Venus, currently shining at a stunning minus 4.5 magnitude, will continue to brighten subtly through the month, peaking at about minus 4.7 on April 27th. If you have a truly dark sky available, you'll be able to use Venus to cast your shadow. At the other end of the planetary spectrum, Uranus is visible at about 10 degrees above the horizon at about half an hour after sunset. The 6th magnitude gas giant will soon be gone for a season. Meanwhile, the morning sky is graced by a close trio of planets this upcoming week, though Mars will soon be pulling away from Jupiter and Saturn. If you really want a telescopic challenge, try spotting Saturn's largest moon, 8th magnitude Titan, in the early morning sky. All aboard the Comet Atlas hype train. News headlines are already proclaiming C2019Y4 as the can't-miss sight of a generation, calling it 5 times the brightness of Jupiter and such. Hype aside, it's a lovely object and has been imaged by several of our members. While it'll be closest to Earth in mid-May, it is on a southward trajectory, meaning now is actually a good time for Michiganders to look at it. Here's an image by our own Doug Bach. Now, Atlas has an orbit similar to that of C1844Y1, the Great Comet of 1844, spurring speculation it's in fact a fragment of that celebrated comet. Now, once the moon wanes, it'll be peak time for spring galaxy viewing, with the deep sky around Ursa Major now riding high and the Coma Virgo galaxies accessible before midnight. This is the ideal window to hunt the bright galaxies in and around Leo, including the famous Leo trio and the M96 group shown above. And that is in the news and in the sky for April 6, 2020. Back to you, Diane.
Thank you, Dale. And if you are interested in being our In the News in the Sky presenter at an upcoming meeting, please let Jonathan, me, or Dale Parton know, and we will get you on our presenter list. So we can now proceed with the officer reports. We're going to do it like we would at a Cranbrook meeting where the officers will take turns. As president, I would like to thank everybody for continuing to support the WAS and making the WAS part of your life during this time of a crisis. I'm grateful to all of you, seeing you, talking to you, whether it's on Discord or WebEx, the broadcast that people are doing on Facebook. It's helped greatly. This has been, for 13 years of my life, a support network, my main social network that I have relied upon, and keeping it going through, even though we can't meet one another, has been very, very meaningful to me. So again, I'd like to thank everybody who's come together, offered their technological skills to make this possible. And we see you out there participating, listening in, commenting, and thank you. And of course, we hope everybody stays safe so we can flatten the curve of this pandemic and sooner or later get back to face-to-face meetings, breaking bread afterwards, and hanging out on a field with as many telescopes as we can get out there. In the meantime, we do have some things chugging along as usual, like Dale Teamy, our program chair, has some presentations to tell you about. Dale?
You probably meant Dale Parton.
Sorry.
Yeah, we do. For our quote-unquote Macomb meeting on April 23rd, which will obviously be online, Professor Jerry Dunifer has a really interesting sounding presentation called Cosmic Fireworks. I'm sure that'll be interesting and exciting. Then for for the first Monday in May, what would have been our Cranbrook meeting, Ken Burton is going to talk about the life of two astronomers and their discoveries and craziness. Talking about Zwicky and Bod for our main presentation. And then the short presentation will be by Jonathan Cade, Observing the Local Group. I'd also like to say that even though I have quite a few speakers lined up, we're far enough into the year that I need to start planning for more speakers for late this year or early next year. So if you're the kind of person that likes lots of time to prepare, let me know if you have a glimmer of an idea. We can put you down tentatively, pencil you in, whatever you're comfortable with for a speaker a few months out. I would also like to say, if you're like me, all of this online stuff is kind of new. And I'm pretty clueless about it. And if that's you, it's okay. We have some real expertise in the club. We lean pretty heavily, I have to say, on Jonathan Cade to help us. So we can get you help. Hope I'm not promising too much, Jonathan. So don't be intimidated by the technology, okay? If you think you have something to present, let me know. Or if you don't know how to contact me, send an email to any of the board officers or to the whole board, and we'll get back with you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dale. And now Riyadh will give us an update on the status of the observatory.
Thank you, Diane. Of course, as everybody knows, the observatory right now is closed, so we are not able to have an open house right at the observatory. However, Doug Buck and with the help, of course, of also Jonathan, we are able to have some kind of a sort of like an open house through Doug's Northern Cross Observatory, which we did at the last open house, where basically Doug processed some of the images that he took, I think a couple of days, a day or two before that, when we were basically observing with him through the internet. So this is going to be more than likely the case for more than likely the next open house. And I'm not sure when we will be able to go back to the observatory, but I think that will be dependent on the conditions and what the information that we get and advice that we get through our state and the federal government, of course, for being able to gather. As you know, the observatory is relatively a small building, and we will be in close proximity to each other. So until further notice, this is what we're going to be doing for the open houses. And it's really very enjoyable and a lot of fun where basically get to sit at the comfort of our house and talk to Doug and watch him do his magic with his telescope and his processing ability. So, and I encourage everybody who can to join these meetings. There's a lot actually that we can learn from that. So the other thing I wanted to say is the last time I checked the observatory, everything was fine. That was on March 22nd. Both buildings were in good shape. The telescope is fine. There are no leaks in the building. And I will continue to check on the observatory physically. So maybe within a couple of weeks or so, I'll be back there again before the next open house to check on everything. And at this time, that's all I have. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you very much, Riyadh. And so then we've got our treasurer, Mark.
I think that Mark was not able to stay on for the meeting, but he said that his treasury report is in the WASP. We're a little bit behind right now on picking up the mail, but if you recently sent something to the P.O. box, we're hoping to get it in the near future.
All right, thanks for relaying that from Mark, Jonathan. And if you haven't renewed your dues for the year, which of course they did expire back in January, do check us out. You can renew via our website, as well as sending a check. All right, thank you. In that case, we will hand things over to Glenn for the secretary report.
Which was our first virtual meeting series. It went pretty darn good, and the minutes were completed and actually published on time. That's it.
Thank you, Glenn. And his excellent minutes can be found in the WASP. Bob Trembley, outreach. I think you'll give us a very unorthodox outreach report tonight.
Unorthodox by being short. Everything's closed. Sidewalk astronomy has taken a huge hit. I'm living with my wife's parents right now, and I can't take my telescope out and show the neighborhood, so I'm going crazy about that. But it's astronomy month, so you can go ahead and try and go outside and look at the sky yourself. Other than that, there's not a whole lot going on other than stuff online. So I'm thinking about trying to come up with some more things we can do online. I know the Night Sky Network has been sending some stuff about online, as has the National After School Association. So I'm going to try and see if I can collect some of that stuff together, maybe give us some ideas for how we can engage the community. Back to you, Diane.
All right, thank you, Bob. Yeah, cut 180 degrees from how you were at last year with the things on our plate. And then we've got Jonathan with publications.
On behalf of Plaid people here in Florida, I have to say the WASP is up.
Yeah, speaking of Plaid,
mostly thanks to Dale T.
Yes,
who is with us.
Plaid people in Florida, it is fantastic that as difficult as this has been, it allows our far-flung members like Dale Teamy to fully participate from Florida as though they were here in Michigan. So that is fabulous. All right, that concludes our officer reports. We do have, of course, our special interest groups. Solar Marty out there.
I don't see if he's on the WebEx. I don't see him.
All right,
although who is calling user 5? Hello, is this Mark? Oh, it's Mark Jacobson.
Yeah, Mark joined a little late. I apologize. I don't know if you went through the treasurer's report. If I can give you a quick summary.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So as of the end of the month, we have 78 active members. Thus far, we've taken in $1,640 this year, and we've spent $418, most of which has been on snacks and speaker fees. We have $22,104 in the bank, $51 in checks, $677 in cash, for a total of $22,833. The details are in the WASP.
Fabulous. Thank you, Mark. All right. Can't seem to find Solar Marty. So as far as the sun goes, not much activity. There seemed to be a freckle of a sunspot there last week, but increasing speculation that we have indeed bottomed out on solar cycle 24 and will be or are in solar cycle 25. So hopefully those of us with solar scopes will have something to see before too long. Hands-on group. I'm thinking that's a short report, Riyadh.
Yeah, actually, I've been going out in the backyard and taking a look at the sky every night that it's clear. Now that I have a little bit of time, so I encourage everybody to do the same. Venus was absolutely fantastic in front of the Pleiades. I hope a lot of people got to see that. Yeah, Betelgeuse is definitely brightening up a lot than before. And it's really amazing to see the difference from, I don't know, maybe about a month ago or so, a little more than a month ago when it was pretty dim. So I encourage people to go out and maybe try to compare it to the brightness of Rigel or some of the other stars nearby. So at this time, that's what we're going to do, and hopefully we'll have something else to look for. Oh, the comet does as well, of course. That's getting to be in an area where it's going to be visible for us easily right now. So until next time, we'll have a second report. Thank you.
Thank you, Riyadh. We do have virtual open houses, of course, and other virtual observing opportunities offered via Discord in the Northern Cross Observatory room. So keep your eyes on our mailing list for that and for other virtual get-togethers through the course of this month. Astrophotography group, anything to report?
Hello, everybody. Question, Jonathan. I can only see like 20 people on this site. How many people do we have on Facebook about?
Muted, Jonathan.
On YouTube, we have 26 watching now, so we have almost 50 people.
Okay, good. As most everybody knows, I like to cheer up the astrophotography group here. And I like to educate the newbies on astrophotography and how to get started with it, or if they have any questions, they can feel free to contact me. By the way, it took me a long time to write this mirror image, by the way. They can contact me, bzol@aol.com. If you have any questions or concerns, one of the most frequent questions I have is, how can I use my iPhone or my cell phone to take pictures through my telescope? Well, that's easily done. So contact me with any questions you might have if you're interested in getting into it, or if you're experienced and you need some advice on maybe how to hook up your DSLR to your telescope. I can answer those questions. Email me and I can give you a call if we want to. But it's a great hobby to get into. I was just up north at my observatory for the past 5 days. We had clear skies but a bright moon. I was able to do a nice image of the comet as well as Messier 3, the star cluster. So,
fabulous.
You know, it's still, you know, even with the moon, we can still do a lot of imaging and stuff like that. And especially with the moon, for newbies, it's a great object to start with, especially with your iPhone. Any questions, give me a call, or I should say, email me, bzol@aol.com. Thanks.
Bill, we should let you know that it's only backwards for you. So all of us saw your email address backwards.
Really? So is
yes,
that right?
That's right.
That's
yes,
right.
that's perfect.
Good. Thank you, Bill.
Oh, geez. Okay, I should have let you chime in earlier, John. So, okay, so I don't need a mirror image with this.
No.
All right, good enough.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, discussion group. Jeff, you on the line? Jeff is our discussion group chair, and he has nothing to report because we are not meeting in person to discuss. If you do want to discuss, there is the Discord chat that's generally open, and some of us pop in and chat with one another.
Yeah, Jeff is on the YouTube stream. I think he's not able to join the WebEx tonight. But
Okay.
we are, even though the WASP says that there won't be a discussion group this month, we're talking about we're probably going to put a specific virtual discussion group on the calendar. So keep an eye on your email box.
Yes, stay tuned to email because we are using email a lot to keep you all informed. And history group. I know the subgroup chairman's on the line tonight.
Yeah. I don't know I have anything to report on the history group because we haven't been doing anything. But if I can get out my armchair, I can go ahead and start looking for more stuff to scan.
Well, there was some news that you reported in the latest from the scanning room in the WASP, if you want to talk about
Indeed.
it.
Oh, yeah. I did go through some of the call and came across a bunch of loose papers. Apparently, Kim Dyer would collect all the loose paper after the meetings and take them home with them, whether they had any usefulness or not. It turned out that there was a stash of several pages, all the same color. When I assembled them, I had another issue of the WASP to scan. So what is it, April?
It was the August 1983.
August 1983, which now completes that year. We have more complete years than we do incomplete years. I'm very pleased.
Excellent. That is indeed something to be proud of. All right, and GLAC. Bob, any update on GLAC?
Oh, there I am. Well, the minutes were in the WASP. I've been including the minutes from the meetings at the end of the outreach report. We are trying to figure out whether we're doing it via WebEx or now. Actually, we're using a Zoom. Changed over to Zoom last time. We're just continuing to plow down the list of topics for next year. We're still not planning on getting a scheduled speaker. Well, I don't even personally don't know if it's going to be held next year if this thing hasn't abated by August. But if it has, we're looking for the clubs to help do hands-on things for the attendees, and so we'd like to have each club do something at their tables. Other than that, not much to report.
All right, so the next meeting is tentatively scheduled to conflict with our own third Thursday meeting. So we are talking to the GLAC people to see if they can change it so that we can have Warren Club members attend the GLAC meeting without choosing between one or the other. I think we've had some new arrivals in the meantime. If you could mute your phone or your computer line just in case there's any background noise, because we have a lot of people out there and we do want to keep the lines as clear as possible. That concludes our officer and special interest group report, since Jonathan cannot sell merch virtually, at least not right now. We do have, I think we have some observing reports out there. If your video's on, feel free to raise your hand and I can call on you.
So I think I'm just gonna unmute everybody.
Okay.
So
I saw Dale Teamy's hands up. Let's have the man from Florida go first.
Okay, this is an armchair astronomer observing report.
All right.
I just got my 3-volume set of the Luna Cognita,
Ooh.
which is a super handbook to lunar observing. Now, as an armchair astronomer, lunar observing may not be in my wheelhouse, but I can go out and look at it. But primarily, I'm been trying to dig up information on the Mare Borealis. He gave his talk on the Shining Mountain.
Mhm.
And it culminated in my purchasing 2 old books and now this 3-volume set, which just now got published. Now, Doug Bach has intimated that he didn't see how anybody could write 3 volumes on the moon. Well, apparently you can. And there is a ton of information in here. Yes. Apparently you can, and there is a ton of information here. What I like best about it is that it does a viewing the moon day by day, things you can see in each slice of the moon as it appears. Then it also goes into all the history of lunar observation, myths, legends, the whole works. Also nomenclature, which has always been a catching point for me when I try to follow Rick Hill's reports. The other thing is the as it goes through the various craters and other features of the moons that it's named, he also talks about how it got its name. And the Orientale has a fascinating history, which I'm going to write about in an upcoming article, The Armchair Astronomer and the WASP. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dale. Do we have other observing reports? I know there's been some interesting things in the sky that have happened in the last 2 weeks.
I thought I saw Ken's hand go up.
No, I'm good.
Oh, well, fine.
No,
Well,
was just something around. It's nothing.
So I was able to finally put my Celestron NextYZ smartphone adapter into action. I was out observing the moon and the Venus and the Pleiades alignment. I tried to look at the moon's trip through the Beehive cluster, but the Beehive cluster, unfortunately, was not being super cooperative. The moon was a little too bright for it. And so I was able to take pictures of almost all of those things with my cell phone held in this cheap 50, well, not super cheap, but $55 or $60 smartphone adapter. And I can just imagine the next lunar observing session when the general public wants me to take pictures of things with their phones. It's going to be a lot easier because you just drop it in, twist some knobs, and get it exactly aligned, and then you're in business. So that was really fun. Of course, actually seeing all these things was even more fun, even if it was from incredibly light polluted Dearborn. I'm really missing Stargate.
Jonathan, there was something I did notice the other night, by the way, that I called my grandsons on the phone because I don't get to see them. But I went out there to look at, to show them their mother's binoculars, Venus going into the Pleiades. But I also noticed that was really, really spectacular was the winter circle, or whatever you want to call it. The other night, it was very clear. I actually threw my binoculars on the nebula in Orion, and actually it was so crystal clear that it came out, pretty nice, just even in the binoculars. You've seen my binoculars; they're pretty nice. Anyway, but to go around, I was explaining. They yelled out to me, "Hey, Papa, where's Gemini?" Because they're Geminis, So it's straight overhead. And I said, "Look up there." And then one of them got disinterested. Said, "I got to do something else, Papa." And that was the end of that. But it was really nice to see, and then to point out the Aldebaran being very close to Saturn, and that you could see the V, and they saw that and they kind of thought that was cool. So there you go.
Nice. Any other observing reports? Anything coming in from the YouTube chat, Jonathan?
So I have one from Jeff McLeod. He says that he saw Venus the last few nights, and he was able to count 37 stars in the Pleiades with his scope.
Nice.
So I wanted to also add that. Did I want to also add? I've taken some videos of lunar observing close up and posted them on the club's YouTube channel. If you have a way of capturing video and would like to share some virtual hands-on observing with the world, let me know, and I would be happy to get it up on the channel. Or if you have it posted on your own channel, I would be happy to share it with the channel. Because I think since we can't do actual sidewalk astronomy right now, it's probably the next best thing for a lot of people. So people really are enjoying the moon videos to a degree that is kind of shocking. Like lots of people are watching them, which I wouldn't have expected. So.
And yes, I'd also like to do a shout out to Jeff's channel on Facebook, Jeff's Astro Chat, where he is giving semi-regular 45-minute to hour-long presentations on some freewheeling subjects, some planned subjects, like Saturn V rockets and things like that. So check it out, subscribe to it. We've been promoting it on the MailChimp mailing list, but there's a lot of them, so we may not be able to inform you of everyone. So if you've enjoyed them, I recommend subscribing. If anybody else is doing something similar, let us know, and we will do our best to connect you to other astronomers. Any other observing reports? If not, we can move to Ask an Astronomy Question. Yes. Thank you, Doug.
Okay, so
I bet there's visuals.
I was doing a little bit of work over the last few weeks, and let me go into presenter mode here.
What?
Which one do I screen? Which screen do I share? Looks like this one. No, that is not correct. Yeah, okay, there we go.
That was a great picture, Doug.
Yeah. So during the Venus, this is a little tiny picture of Venus during the Venus Pleiades conjunction through the 10-inch. So it's tiny because that's a lot of magnification required to get that. I've also been taking shots of two comets, Pan-STARRS and Atlas. This is Comet Atlas, 2019 Y4 in the last 2 weeks. I've also been doing some galaxy work. This is M65 I took 2 weeks ago. Well, almost 2 weeks ago. M101 I took on the 22nd. This was during our virtual open house that we had, by the way. These are images that I took during that night. And also did some sombrero on the 30th, which was just last week. And of course, the Venus conjunction. This is day 2, which would have been the 3rd. And this was the one on the 2nd with a lens flare.
Complete with the UFO.
Yeah. So that's just a short story of what I've been doing this past week. Okay.
All right.
So I don't know if this will work, but I might try to. Maybe I can try to share some of my photos. I wonder if this. Can you see? Does that look? Oh no! Yeah, no, I didn't want
Gray
to.
bar.
That was my entire desktop. Okay, I'll figure out how to do that next time, I guess.
Hey, Jonathan,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, your photos through your iPhone will be a great thing to show everybody, especially like I said before, the people that want to get into this hobby, and they're always asking how to do that with their cell phone. So if you could show your pictures, that'd be perfect for that type of thing.
Well, I tried sharing. Oh, here this. So this is the second night of Venus with the Pleiades. So as taken by me as opposed to Doug. I don't know what that is. Oh, I see. Oh, this is super zoomed in. This is the moon, which was looking really great. I discovered a new feature the other day that I've named the lunar llama. So keep an eye out. Here's the lunar llama right here where my mouse cursor is. So keep an eye out for that lunar llama the next time you're observing the moon at just after first quarter. Oh, shoot. That is the beehive, but it didn't quite come out that way. This was that was Venus, too bright to get, and this is the Orion Nebula as photographed with an iPhone through an eyepiece. I wish I could zoom out. Oh, maybe I can't. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah. So now I zoomed out. So I was pretty impressed with how well those turned out, given the humble equipment I was using. So
Yes, very well done. And like I say, for all you people out there, this is just an example of what you can do with your simple cell phone. Very nice.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing, all of you. Well, it is now 8:13 p.m. We have time for one more observing report or one question. Otherwise, I'll be turning things over to our program chair to introduce the short presentation.
I have a quick question. It's for Jonathan. The photo you took with the adapter in your iPhone or your phone, what telescope did you use? Which telescope? I think you have a Dob.
yeah, it was with a 10-inch Dob.
Okay.
So most of the things that I took photos of would come out pretty well in an 8-inch. The moon will come out well in anything. Probably the Orion Nebula would get pretty dim in anything smaller than the 8-inch with a cell phone camera. You would still see it fine with smaller telescopes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fabulous. Dale, I think I can turn the ball over to you. Introduce our short presentation.
And I wonder who that could be.
It was going to be Gary Ross, but
yes. Poor Gary.
all this happened.
Oh, sorry, I muted you. I'm sorry, please restate.
Okay. Poor Gary was a little, I don't know what word to use, intimidated by the technology, I think, of trying to do this online. He was going to be have our short presentation tonight. But we all love him, and he'll get there someday, maybe. So Diane, our president, is going to give the short presentation for tonight. I think many of us know from her previous presentations that she loves the space race that used to happen between the United States and the Soviet Union, especially the Apollo program. So this is kind of one aspect of that she's going to be talking about tonight. Her presentation is called Your Friendly Neighborhood Astronaut, talking about the only native Michigander to fly on a Project Apollo mission. I'll let you, Diane, give us the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. All right. Friendly neighborhood astronaut, as Dale said, a tribute to Al Worden. So Colonel Alfred Merrill Worden, native of Jackson, Michigan, died in his sleep at the age of 88 on March 18th. He's not a household name. Unless you are an avid fan of Project Apollo like me, you might not remember his name at all, but I'm hoping to change that tonight. Al was born in Jackson on February 7th, 1932, one of 6 siblings, and he grew up on a farm. By the age of 12, he was running that farm. By the age of 14, he was driving a tractor. He did not like it. He wanted a life beyond cutting hay and feeding chickens and pigs and whatnot, and so he decided to get out of the farm. He got a scholarship to Princeton, but it was revoked. Why? They found out he had not studied Latin. Well, then he got into West Point, a U.S. military academy at West Point, New York, which of course is a rather difficult school to get into. And he graduated from there with a Bachelor of Military Science in 1955. He went on to get more Masters of Science degrees from University of Michigan, go Blue, in astronautical and aeronautical engineering and instrumentation engineering, class of 63. Now, West Point back then did not do test pilot stuff. So Al graduated with no experience as a test pilot. He was encouraged by his instructors to be commissioned in the Air Force, which he did. His other option would have been going into the Navy to be a test pilot there. He thought the Air Force would be a quick path to promotion. It wasn't. His U of M studies were actually intended to advance his career in the Air Force, both get him a better skill set and to hopefully move him up the chain of command. He was good at being a test pilot. He ended up participating in a test pilot exchange program with the Royal Air Force of the UK, where he spent a stint at a base there in England. And upon returning back to the States, he became an instructor at the Aerospace Research Pilot School. This was 1965. Well, in 1966, Al was one of the 19 astronauts chosen as part of the 5th group of astronauts selected to work on Project Apollo. This was actually his 2nd attempt at getting into the astronaut corps. He might have made the 3rd group based on his qualifications, but his stint in the RAF conflicted with it, and the Air Force and NASA didn't want to interfere with that. So he did have to wait. As an Air Force man, he also could have applied for their manned orbital laboratory program, but Al correctly assumed it was never going to get off the ground, pun intended. So he became a NASA man. Well, after a couple of years, he was assigned to the backup crew for Apollo 12 as its command module pilot. He joined David Scott, who had flown on Gemini 8 and Apollo 9 and was the backup commander, and Jim Irwin, a fellow rookie, who was the backup lunar module pilot. All 3 of them were Air Force men, and all 3 had attended U of M. So that was cool. The way that the astronaut crew rotation worked, a backup crew generally flew together 3 flights later. So that meant that the backup crew for 12 were, I won't say shoo-ins, but let's say heavily favored to be the prime crew for Apollo 15. Now, command module pilot might not seem glorious. That was the guy in Apollo who didn't get to go walk on the moon. He got to stay in the spaceship, flying it, and make sure that the other guys had a return ride home. But that was a critical role, and it involved flying solo, which of course was technologically impressive. Al knew that command module pilots who did a commendable job were in line to command their own mission, as happened with Jim Lovell, Dave Scott himself, John Young. Michael Collins of Apollo 11 was offered command, but he didn't feel like being a spaceman anymore, and he retired. That meant Dick Gordon from the Apollo 12 prime crew was in line to be a future commander. So, in a different universe, better funding for Project Apollo, a couple of things happening that didn't happen in our world, and one key thing not happening that happened here. Al Worden from Jackson, Michigan might have been leaving boot prints on Tycho crater, Copernicus crater as the commander of Apollo 20. Of course, that didn't happen, or you might know his name. Meanwhile, Al was experiencing a private crisis. By 1969, his marriage to wife Pamela, with whom he had 2 daughters, was ending. Astronauts were supposed to be role models. Going through a divorce was generally not acceptable. And that only ever happened with one astronaut prior to the Wardens deciding they didn't really want to be married anymore. Well, Al went to his commander, and Dave Scott said, yeah, I will talk to the head of the astronaut office. You do what you have to do. And whatever Dave said to Deke Slayton, the guy in charge of picking the crew rotation, it worked. Al got a divorce, broke up his family, and did not get fired or grounded. First time that had ever happened in NASA. Might not be the best legacy to leave, but yeah, them's the facts. So, Al got to stick with Dave Scott and Jim Irwin for the prime crew of Apollo 15. The All-Air Force crew named their lunar module Falcon in tribute to their branch of the armed services. And meanwhile, the command and service module was dubbed Endeavour. Scott and Irwin had Falcon. Endeavour was going to be Al's baby. At this point, the drama of who would be first on the moon was long over, and the Apollo 15 crew focused on doing their jobs, mastering flying and mastering science. This was more fulfilling to Al than simply being first somewhere. As a junior astronaut, he'd never expected to be first or second or third anywhere anyway. This assignment was juicy enough. And the scientific training the crew underwent became critical to the overall goals of Project Apollo as Congress stopped funding things and missions got canceled. First, Apollo 20 was scrapped, then 19, then 18. And with only 3 missions left to achieve scientific milestones, Apollo 15 became the first J mission, the code for extended mission, with a more exciting landing site than the boring crater that they were originally supposed to go to. They would be the first to use the rover to tool around and collect samples, or at least Dave Scott and Jim Irwin would. Al's job was to master the lunar surface from afar and conduct experiments from lunar orbit while the other 2 guys were down on the moon picking up rocks. He became immersed in how to be the best aerial lunar geologist he could be, studying under the Egyptian geologist Farouk El-Baz, with whom he got along quite well and would frequently take his instructor out for drinking White Russians after a geology session, which sounds like fun. So he had a good time with the geology. He did not, however, enjoy the underwater training for his spacewalk, which he later called useless. Now, at this point in NASA's existence, with public interest waning, missions being canceled, Al knew that to keep public support for NASA going, space travel needed to inspire America's kids. Kids were not permitted to watch live launches, or because they might blow up. But to Al, that was a missed opportunity to engage the youth. So Al decided to use something else to reach America's children: television. The show he used? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. As it happened, at the time that Al reached out to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, they were planning a series about parents going away from the kids, going to work, going on errands, teaching kids to deal with separation. So the idea of astronaut Al leaving his family for 2 weeks to go to the moon struck Fred Rogers as absolutely perfect for the concept. Mr. Rogers proposed filming one show before and one after the launch, and Al thought that was a great idea. So, 3 days before Al entered the pre-launch quarantine, Mr. Rogers' neighborhood visited Cape Canaveral. Fred had a list of questions from children about spaceflight, some of which Al couldn't answer because he hadn't been in space yet. Al promised to take the list to space and think about the questions while he was up there and answer them when he got back. And of course, Fred Rogers agreed. Why wouldn't he? So Apollo 15 lifted off from the Cape July 26th of 1971. The U of M crew carried 3 U of M items: a miniature flag, a miniature of the Department of Aerospace Engineering seal, and a charter of the U of M Alumni Club of the Moon, which they left on the moon. It was a busy mission. While his crewmates Scott and Irwin drove the rover and collected their rocks, Al orbited the moon alone for what he called 3 wonderful days, setting a new record for the most isolated human alive. His days were packed with scientific experiments and observations, and his identification of potential volcanic cinder cones around a region of the moon called Taurus Littrow cemented that region as the Apollo 17 landing site, the very first and, to this date, last site on the moon to be seen by a professional geologist. On the way home, Al conducted a true deep space EVA, became the first person to see the moon and Earth both by turning his head, and he started writing some poetry. This is his poetry. Well, they splashed down on August 7th. They got to enjoy the fresh water and fresh air because at this point, nobody believed in moon germs, so they didn't have to get packed off to a quarantine trailer. And during debriefing, Al wrote more poetry. Here is a sample. I particularly like the final stanza. Cycle over doing fine. I was born at 39. That's my age right now. Anyway, the scientific successes of Apollo 15 proved that the program had matured, and Al and his crewmates were heroes. That meant going back to Mr. Rogers' neighborhood to show off the autographed envelope of kids' questions, answer the inevitable question about going to the bathroom in space, and going to meet King Friday the 13th. I'll return to the show in later episodes, bringing space food on one occasion. And I'd like to say, while I was too young to see the original run of these, I did catch it on reruns. And at the time, I was into astronauts. I didn't know the difference between Al Worden from the Apollo years, or the Sally Ride and Judy Resnick and the astronauts flying the space shuttle. But I loved astronauts, and I think it's fair to say that Al Worden's rare conviction that reaching out to children mattered and that it was an astronaut's duty to connect with kids is one reason that I'm here in the Warren Astronomical Society all these years later. This was not a priority for most astronauts of his era. And it mattered to him, and well, it matters to me. Sadly, the envelope from Mr. Rogers wasn't the only thing Al brought along in orbit. He, Scott, and Irwin entered into a deal with a West German stamp dealer where they accepted $7,000 apiece that would go into a trust fund for their kids, and they would take these postage covers to the moon, and then they were under the impression it was no big deal and really no different than selling your autograph. And in fact, other earlier crews had done similar things, but for one reason or another, these postal covers never got on the official manifests of what was going up into space, so they were technically unauthorized. Anyway, it got nasty. Through the NASA brass, it was a scandal. They got called before Congress for an official reprimand. The shining image of the perfect astronaut, which was pretty much embodied by Dave Scott up to that point in his career, did not recover inside NASA, and none of the crew got to fly again. Al was shipped off to Mountain View, California, to the Ames Research Center, where he got the title of Senior Aerospace Scientist and then Chief of the System Studies Division, and then he left NASA completely in 1975. Served as president of some aerospace companies, vice president of BF Goodrich, chairman of the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation until 2011, providing scholarships to exceptional science and engineering students, and he even ran for Congress. He lost the Republican primary in 1982 at Florida's 12th congressional district, sold some of his share of the postal covers, the infamous postal covers, to pay the debts of that campaign. But he considered that the high point of his life, saying, being a spaceman was rote. It was work. Running for Congress, it was an important thing to do, even if he failed. He also wrote and published 3 books, his 2011 memoir, Falling to Earth, and 2 books from the 70s, a poetry collection, Hello Earth, Greetings from Endeavor, and a book called I Want to Know About a Flight to the Moon. Sadly out of print, goes for $600 or more. It was a book for children, and the foreword was written by Mr. Rogers. And I would love to get my hands on a copy for my nieces. So, even in the end, he loved talking to people, saying in 2014 the Space Review that interacting with people kept him grounded. Space Review dubbed him as the boy from Michigan who went to the moon. And I hope you have a little appreciation for the guy now. Rest in peace, Al Warden.
Good
All
job,
right,
Diane.
any questions?
I unmuted everyone so we can clap.
Everybody. All right, well, if there are no questions, we can take a little bio break, and we'll be calling the meeting back to order by 8:45 to start the feature presentation. I can't thank everybody for bringing snacks because it is bring your own snacks.
So actually, feel free to step away, but we did have a question from LHMM on the YouTube channel, which is latest news says the Comet Atlas T4 is breaking up. Is that true?
You did see a news story about that this afternoon, but hadn't had a chance to dig into it before the meeting started. So that is a fear, is that it might be breaking up, but I haven't seen confirmation yet.
Yeah, there's no confirmation, but there's an anomaly that has been observed, a slight anomaly that may lead to that assumption. So we'll stay tuned and keep an eye on it.
Indeed. Right, it is 8:45. If everybody could file back to their desk, chair, futon, beanbag, what have you, drinks and snacks in hand. I would again like to turn things over to Dr. Dale Parton to introduce tonight's featured presenter.
Thank you, Diane. Our speaker tonight for our main assembly, our outreach officer, Bob has been an amateur astronomer for a long time. He's really into some interesting software, science fiction kind of stuff. He's a volunteer NASA Solar System Ambassador. And he also works for the Vatican Observatory Foundation, writing astronomy and space science posts for them. Tonight, he has a really interesting sounding topic, challenges of interstellar travel. Bob, take it away.
Start sharing. So I got my presenter view. All right, so I am Bob Trembley. I said I'm an amateur astronomer forever, and I am the outreach officer for the World Astronomical Society. I am a volunteer NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador, have been since 2013, and I am also a volunteer ambassador for the OSIRIS-REx Asteroid Sample Return Mission. I work for the Vatican Observatory Foundation. Not only do I blog for them, I do everything. Remember how I did the newsletter a few years ago? Well, I'm doing their newsletter now. Just a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, so as always, any one of the things I'm going to be talking about tonight, is somebody could do an entire lecture about it. That's going to be happening multiple times. So go ahead and do it. I would encourage anybody to go ahead and create a presentation and get it. So the idea of worlds orbiting other stars is pretty darn old, like from the 1300s, 1400s. And these guys suggested the existence of inhabitable worlds or about the plurality of worlds. And well, technically, that's science fiction, isn't it? So let's talk about science fiction for a minute with some deference to Gary Ross. It's a genre of speculative fiction that typically talks about futuristic concepts and stuff. And we're going to be specifically talking about space travel and exploration, that kind of stuff. It's been called the literature of ideas, and we're also going to be discussing some of the consequences of scientific and technological innovations. So I am going to be using numerous examples from science fiction during this lecture. I really don't have much of a choice because several of the topics don't really exist yet. I have been going to science fiction conventions since 1978, and you may have heard of like the Comic Cons and that kind of stuff. Midwest conventions are run by fans like myself, not money-hungry media conglomerates. And I've met many of my favorite authors and made numerous lifelong friends in the science fiction community. And it's the same way in the astronomy community, like Diane alluded to earlier. I became a solar system
I'm sorry, Bob. Could you either speak up or maybe move the microphone a little bit closer? You're a little bit.
Okay. How's that?
That's better.
Okay. I became a solar system ambassador because of the things I was learning at lectures at science fiction conventions presented by another solar system ambassador who was a buddy of mine. A few years later, I became the programming lead for the North American Science Fiction Convention held in downtown Detroit here. And I drew from members of the Warren Astronomical Society, including Gary Ross, who spoke at this convention. At that convention, I also had Brother Guy Skype in from the Vatican Meteorite Lab. There must have been 300 people in the audience. That was awesome. So I've been a featured guest at a couple local conventions. My wife and I were guests of honor at a science fiction convention in Columbus last year, which this is the first time I had my VR set up at one, and the guy that wrote The Trouble with Tribbles got to use my VR setup. So I'm a huge science fiction fan. So many of the things that were once science fiction have now become a reality. And going down the list here, you know, we didn't have artificial satellites until the late 50s, and going to the moon, going to other planets, and going into interstellar space, detecting gravity waves. All that was fiction until it became reality. And the one thing we're still waiting for is discovering life on pick your planet or moon or wherever. So Brother Guy actually gave me this information. This is pretty interesting. So in the August 28 issue of Amazing Stories, there was a story titled Armageddon 2419. And the soldier Tony Rogers was trapped in a cave filled with strange gases and emerged unharmed 500 years later. Well, this evolved into Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, the comic strip and the serial. And Brother Guy said when he presents this, he says, with this, science fiction no longer just reflected the popular culture, it entered the popular culture. In this same issue of Amazing Stories was The Skylark of Space by E. Doc Smith, and it's the first popular book where heroes travel to planets in another solar system. So 1928. So skipping ahead a few generations, well, in the middle of that, one interesting point. In 1931, John W. Campbell in The Islands of Space mentioned the term warp drive and described the general concept. In 1957, the space age started. Things actually put in orbit. And I was at a convention corrected by a Russian friend of mine. When I said Sputnik, she looked at me angrily and said Sputnik. I'm like, okay. Skipping ahead some more, couple generations, or a generation here. Again, thousands of lecture worth of material happened here. In 1977, the twin Voyager spacecraft launched. Voyager 1 left the Earth and traveled nearly 18 months before the Jupiter flyby. The mission of the Voyager spacecraft was to fly by the planets in the outer solar system. Voyager 2 took 12 years before it flew by Neptune. And in 2012, it left the magnetic influence of the sun. So it took 35 years before Voyager 2 left the magnetic influence of the sun. And as of last week when I was writing this, it's 20 light hours away. So unless something unexpected happens to Voyager, in 40,000 years, it's going to pass by the red dwarf star AC plus 793888, which is 17 light years away. And take a look at that Voyager. Zoom in on it. It's a little bit battered there. So I'm sure it'll be fine when it gets there. So this demonstrates one of the problems with interstellar space travel: distance. Planets in the outer solar system are very far away. The stars are so much very farther, which I find it helpful to remember this quote from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you've never listened to the audio, you really should. It goes kind of like this: space is big, really big. You just wouldn't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down to the chemist, but that's just peanuts to space. So, a word of warning: if you have an upper respiratory infection, do not read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You will laugh, and it will hurt you. It did me. But anyway, so let's talk about the energy it takes to get to the stars. Okay, the purpose of a launch vehicle is to apply directed energy upon a payload to change its delta V so that it can be put on the desired trajectory. So this is Voyager 1. There's the spacecraft, and Voyager, I don't know if you can see my mouse, Voyager is that little thing way up in the top here. The spacecraft itself is 0.8 tons. The launch vehicle is 697 tons. So it took 697 tons to push less than a ton of a spacecraft out of the solar system. And it had to use gravity assist. So the payload fraction, you just divide the 0.8 by the 697, you get that. So it takes a lot of energy to push a little bit out of the solar system. Now, if your plan is to go to another solar system, another star system, and slow down and orbit it, you need just about the same amount of energy. So now that that payload that you're pushing is that original Titan rocket. So again, lots and lots of energy required to get a small amount of mass to another solar system. So, and there may be considerable relative velocity between the sun and your target star. When you get there, you may be going a lot faster than that star's escape velocity. So if you plan on maneuvering and checking out planets, you'll need more fuel and energy to be able to do that. So again, the energy cost just keeps going up and up. So you're wondering how it's going to fit my granddaughter in here, aren't you? Let's talk about human generations. So everybody knows what a generation is, right? I had to go look it up to describe it, but essentially it's between 22 and 32 years. So there's my wife, and there's my daughter, and yes, that is a Wile E. Coyote style detonation box. We call the picture Baby Boom. And here's her daughter, Eleonora, my granddaughter, which we're not able to see right now. So this is a generation. It took Voyager over a generation to reach interstellar space, which illustrates another challenge of interstellar travel: time. At our current level of technology, it takes a long time to get to the closest star. So, by the way, if you guys haven't seen The Farthest, Voyager in Space on PBS, it's an absolutely excellent program. So, Voyager gets its power from what's called an RTG. That is a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. That's that thing sticking out Voyager. And another by the way, I didn't know that the Apollo 14 astronauts put one of those on the moon. Another, by the way, there's some RTG humor in The Martian. He uses that thing to heat his cab, and he brags about it. In Kerbal Space Program, there are RTGs, and there is a reference, a humorous reference to that scene in The Martian. But anyway, so an RTG uses red hot plutonium, and it uses a array of thermocouples to convert the heat released by the decay of radioactive material into electricity using via the Seebeck effect. This generator has no moving parts. Problem is that plutonium power source has a half-life of about 88 years, and it decays into uranium-234. Voyager is eventually going to run out of power, and probably pretty soon. And that will be a very sad day. Should probably start writing a post about it now. So this highlights another of the challenges with interstellar travel: power. Where are you going to get your power? Solar energy is not available between the stars. Fission, some of the fuels might decay before the end of the trip. We don't got fusion generators yet, and we certainly don't have quantum vacuum thrusters yet. And Conan-style wheels of pain are inefficient, hard to use in a zero-G environment, and carry all sorts of negative socioeconomic and political implications. And you have to explain their use, like Mr. Scott in engineering has a top-notch team who are very experienced at generating power using old-school techniques. No, it's not going to work either. So where are you going to get your power? So autonomous AI probes. NASA is currently working on some, well, they've got some on the probes on Mars. They're also working on autonomous AI software for satellites and planes and that kind of stuff. There are a lot of AI probes in science fiction. Like I showed you the picture of V'ger, Dennis Taylor's Bobiverse series. There's the computer mind replication. The same with Charles Stross. That's a really weird book. So, what would an alien autonomous probe look like if one were in the solar system now? So, let's talk about what space does to the human body. So, astronaut Scott Kelly is a living example of why an extended stay in microgravity is bad for you. Again, a whole lecture could be given on his trip up there and the effects and what's happened. But suffice it to say, human bodies evolved in a gravity field, and they like their gravity field, and they like their one atmosphere of pressure and their nice controlled temperature, none of which the vacuum of space has. So let's handle part of this with gravity. How do you handle gravity? Well, there's a couple ways in science fiction. Magic, like Star Trek with their gravity generators, or this 2001 had rotating cylinders to handle it. We'll get to some of these later. So how did they handle it in the past? Well, in 1901, H.G. Wells booked The First Men on the Moon. There was a hypothetical anti-gravity substance, which coated this device, and it allowed it to go to the moon. So this was 1919 silent movie of that book. It was remade in 1964, and so that's an anti-gravity material. One of the best ways of handling gravity is rotating structures. Again, this is the space station in 2001. There's Discovery in 2001. Babylon 5 space station. I don't know if you can see my gallons, but the whole thing rotated. This thing was huge. The International Space Station does not have anything rotating on it yet. But in the science fiction book Seven Eves, this is set way in the future. They've docked an asteroid with the International Space Station, and there is a rotating torus on it to provide like 1/4 gravity for the astronauts. And shortly after the book Seven Eves came out, somebody went and recreated that in Kerbal Space Program. So in space, like you've got effects on the human body. Well, you've also got effects on the human mind. So let's talk about some of those, like privacy or lack thereof. How much do you think these guys got? And not much. So there needs to be a new word coined for astronaut, cosmonaut, sardine hybrid, maybe sardonaut or something, because these guys are sardines. And here's the International Space Station. It looks like these guys are floating in a cave lined with electronic equipment, and it's loud, and you better not have any issues with claustrophobia at all. So we are a long way from the nice open spaces of the Star Trek Enterprise's spacious crew quarters and meeting rooms. So continuing on with the human mind, isolation. And that's something you could all relate to right now. And boredom. Not so much me, because I've been playing a lot of computer games. I was supposed to have given this presentation about the time I was moving, and so that didn't happen. And I'm actually glad it didn't, because author John Scalzi came out with this post shortly after the stay-at-home thing happened, and that fits right into this perfectly. So, anyone who thinks that it's a slam dunk going to other stars needs to do a little more research and think harder. So, continuing on with the human mind, personality conflict. So this is an image, these images from the movie Dark Star in 1974. It's John Carpenter's first film, incredibly low budget, cult status. Crew's been together on a deteriorating starship for 20 years, and each has gone off the deep end in their own way. Personality conflicts abound. It's pretty hilarious. This is the book, one of the books I read researching this. This is Packing for Mars by Mary Roach, and she goes into exhaustive and in many instances disgusting detail about everything that needed to be tested for the early space program and applies it to what it would take to go to Mars. And she, she doesn't come up with a lot of good solutions. It's pretty dreadful. So why would you want to go to other stars? Well, for scientists, that's pretty obvious, because there's an endless supply of science out there. Military, political expansion. But what if you need to? What if the Earth biosphere collapses? Or what if the sun dies for whatever reason? That's going to take a while. But anyway, and what if you need resources? Well, one of the science fiction stories. Oh God. Yeah, I'm sorry. You don't go to somebody else's planet. You don't travel to another star system to steal their gold. All right, you could mine it from asteroids. That just makes me angry. Two great actors, one bad movie. Let's talk about propulsion technology. So this is not an exhaustive list. I am not covering everything here. This list on Wikipedia is gigantic, but these are the main ones and pretty much ones that we're familiar with. Chemical rockets, the Dawn, the Hall effect, magnetoplasma dynamic thrusters. These are all new. So there's a lot of these. Several are flight proven. Some are validated proof of concepts and prototypes demonstrated on the ground. Several of these are available in Kerbal Space Program as part of the KSP Interstellar mod. So these are current and active technologies. Well, there's a whole bunch of proposed technologies. Some of these are absolutely crazy. Some are pretty fantastic, and some would be amazing to build. One of the first ones that I ever came aware of was the Buzzard Ramjet. And this is from reading Larry Niven's stories back in the 70s. And what this does is it creates an enormous magnetic field out in front of the ship, sucking in interstellar hydrogen and blowing it out the back in a fusion engine. A lot of these technologies are assuming we have a fusion engine, which we don't have yet, or a fusion generator. one of my favorite propulsion techniques is the Orion nuclear pulse drive. This thing shoots little atomic bombs out the back, and they explode. The force pushes this push plate, and you can get up to a significant percentage of the speed of light with this thing. Again, there's a Bob for Kerbal Space Program for this. It might not be as crazy as you think because they actually did testing in the 1950s about it. Now, the reason we don't have nuclear rockets like this is because of the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. So development on that ceased, but it's available for Kerbal Space Program too. And this is hilarious. So a little warp drive. Term warp drive, again, originated in the 1931 science fiction novel Islands of Space. Star Trek used the term warp drive to describe their method of light travel. Then in the old Star Trek, the old series, in the Next Generation, they referred to a warp bubble several times. And what this is referring to pretty much is the, and I know I'll pronounce this wrong, even though I have it here, Alcubierre drive. It's a speculative drive based on the solution of Einstein's field equations. It requires some weird stuff like negative mass to be created and would require enormous amounts of energy, thus the Enterprise having an antimatter drive. One of these is available for Kerbal Space Program in a mod, and here it is. Creates this field around your spaceship, and I actually ran this once in Kerbal Space Program. So here you are. This vessel is using the drive. It takes all of the really weird and confusing orbital mechanics stuff you learned in Kerbal Space Program, crumples them up, and throws them out the airlock. When you turn the drive on, you're just sitting there with the planet behind you, and you're both still in this same frame of reference. But let's say you accelerate toward Mars, and when you get near Mars, you turn the drive off. Suddenly, you're back in the frame of reference of the planet you left, and when I did this, Mars whipped past me. So you don't want to be in its orbital path, and this is why all of the starships in Star Trek have this impulse drive, because they still need to accelerate the old-fashioned way. Now, in an time loop plot worthy of a Star Trek episode, the real-life creator of the warp drive hypothesis was credited by the fictional Starfleet Academy for the creation of warp drive used in Star Trek. And that real-life scientist credits Star Trek for the inspiration of the warp drive hypothesis. So, yeah. Project Daedalus. This is one of my favorites. Laser-driven internal confinement fusion drive. Again, this is assuming we have fusion. A study, actual study, between 73 and 78 for an uncrewed interstellar spacecraft. Now, remember, uncrewed, this thing is gigantic. So remember how I said it takes a lot of energy to get stuff out here? This is what it takes to get a small probe up to a significant amount of the speed of light. Project Daedalus would need to be built in orbit. It is so big, which would require orbital construction on an absolutely massive scale. This is some pre-flight gameplay from Kerbal Space Program 2, and this is the Daedalus drive. And looking at this picture, I am reminded seriously of Chesley Bonestell's artwork from the 40s and 50s. So, yeah, I'm sure that's intentional. So, when the drive fires up, here's the drive firing up in the KSP announcement video. And people online were very quick to point out the very unfortunate Kerbals floating there who are about to get a severe dose of radiation. So, propulsion technologies, science fiction. This would be great. Inertialess drive. It's a wave accelerating close to the speed of light without worrying about your inertia. It's been used all over the place. It's freaking magic. And Dennis Taylor down here at the bottom. He actually alludes to that in his book, pretty humorous way. The ship here is the drive from Dennis Taylor's story, and there's Dennis Taylor's. We are the Bobiverse series. I cannot say enough good things about this series. He talks about interstellar colonization and the problems with it. It's just awesome. This is just an aside. This is a story I read very recently. These probably only this is only good for sailing around a star, but they came up with a cloth that can stop neutrinos, and using that you can sail just like a sailing ship around the solar system. Kind of a crazy concept. So all of these concepts so far require stuff we don't got. Well, this thing was proposed in 2016, the Breakthrough Starshot. That guy's holding a space probe. The idea is to put about 1,000 of these into orbit. They're all going to have a 3-foot mirror, and its plan is for a flyby of Proxima Centauri. I just saw it today as I was working on this. There's an update to it about making it autonomous and be able to brake using the energy of the stars in the Centauri system and actually go into orbit. So that'd be cool. So how do you get that thing to there? Well, you use an array of insanely big laser beams on the surface of the planet that focus a terajoule of energy to each of these sails, which will accelerate it at 10,000 Gs for 10 minutes, reaching about 15% the speed of light. That's crazy. We can do it, great. So at between 15 and 20% the speed of light, it'll take about 20, 30 years to get there, and then 4 years for the return message. So again, I'm hoping this is not just a concept, but right now it is. Interestingly enough, this whole coherent light beam laser thing is the plot of Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell's Mote in God's Eye from '74. So why use ground-based lasers? Well, rather than orbiting lasers, well, ground-based lasers have a very small targeting window. Orbiting lasers could potentially target the entire planet, which is great for missile defense. Not so great if crazy people gain control of them. So this last drive technology I'm going to be talking about, this is not proposed. This is from science fiction. This is from the Expanse series, and it's called the Epstein drive. It's just a very efficient fusion drive that allows the starships to run under continuous acceleration to halfway to their goal, flip, and accelerate to decelerate down to their goal. So your typical Hohmann transfers that you do between planets can go jump. So could this be used if we had something like this? Could this be used for interstellar travel? Well, it could be, but in this series, it's not, because of the discovery of an alien portal network or cheating technology. But there is a whole subreddit talking about using that type of drive for interstellar travel. So speaking of cheating technology, wormhole portals. This is the Stargate franchise. Is a found alien technology that is so far beyond our level of technology, they might as well be magic. Star Trek Deep Space Nine found a naturally occurring stationary phenomena that was a wormhole. I guess you'd say it's a found natural technology. Man-made wormhole portals. Let me relate the story of this picture here. You're the person in the silver suit. You and your crew are the first humans to have flown to Mars, and you just landed there. Standing across from you is the biggest bastard in human history, a natural-born genius who invented and constructed a wormhole machine in his garage. Knowing when your Mars landing was going to occur, he calculated the exact moment you were going to step foot on Mars, and open the wormhole and step through moments before you. You are no longer the first man on Mars, you're the second, and your ship, A multi-billion-dollar investment is now a huge, massive, gigantic waste of money, energy, and time. Across from you, the man smiles at you with a very large grin, and you and the other Mars astronauts walk home to Earth through the portal. Technology like this would change society and certainly does in that series. So, if we can have a mad scientist create one of those, that'd be just fine, thank you. So, magic portals. Well, as Arthur Clarke used to say, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So I'm going to say that the wardrobe in the Chronicles of Narnia was a high-tech device. Yeah, there you go. So my buddy Barry Game likes to say any technology that's distinguishable from magic is insufficiently advanced, and we've got a lot of that. So let's say you use one of these fantastic drive technologies and you get up to a significant percent of the speed of light. Well, when you're traveling a significant percent the speed of light, the particles in the interstellar medium are traveling a significant percent of the speed of light relative to you. And you're going to need some shielding because when you're traveling a significant percent the speed of light, it's like being in the Hadron Collider beam. So this is some pretty interesting things. They're working on some magnetic shielding technology, and I like how the one on the left there kind of looks like the Enterprise. That's pretty funny. So generation ships. Let's say you want to send humans. All right, the idea of a generation ship, hypothetical arc, travels at sublight speed, would take centuries or thousands of years, and the original occupants would grow old, and their descendants would take over. Which brings up some interesting legal ramifications for shipborne descendants. Imagine the first generation of teenagers who don't want to be on that ship. That's not going to be fun. So, now this is rather interesting. Robert Goddard, the father of rocketry, was the first to write about long duration interstellar journeys. He wrote a story about the death of the sun. There's your reason for leaving. And the crew would travel in suspended animation and be awoken when they reach another star. This surprised the heck out of me. So, any manned vessel, like a generation ship that we send into interstellar space, will need a flourishing ecosystem and be entirely self sustainable because you're not getting any help. So you're going to have oxygen, CO2 recycling, waste recycling, hydroponics. Now, relate a story from the biosphere. I went to the biosphere last year as part of the VOF's Faith in Astronomy workshop, and they had different biosphere setups. And one of the things they said is, and I didn't realize this, different plants require different chemical baths, so you can't use the same chemicals. You got to keep them separate. If a blight occurs in one module, you've got to make sure that other modules are, sealed off and protected, much like we're doing now. So separate biospheres might be something like that. This is the mega generation ship from the TV series The Star Lost, and all these would be separate biospheres, and they'd all be inhabited with living people. Another idea is a giant world ship. This has got your Daedalus drive in the back here, but this is a giant rotating torus, and the inhabitants may or may not be in suspended animation. But if you're going to be going to another star, do you want to put all your eggs in one basket, one ship? Or do you want to send a fleet all with specific purposes? And this would look really cool from the ground as they lit up their drives to leave. So I mentioned suspended animation. The suspended animation has been a staple in science fiction for a long time. We are working on it, but we're not there yet. I found this is pretty interesting. It's a NASA paper discussing inducing hibernation in humans for the trip to Mars, but a lot of research needs to be done yet. There's a whole bunch of physiological effects like, liver disease that can come out of this. So this is not a viable option for interstellar travel yet. So let's say you have finally reached another star system. So congratulations, you've entered the orbit of Proxima Centauri. No dimensional horror has come out to eat your ship. The very first thing you do is a comprehensive survey of every single planet from orbit, every planet, every asteroid. And this way, you won't be surprised by the kilometer-high tidal wave that would have been seen from orbit had you done a survey. And when you found a planet suitable for your colony, I'd send down an army of probes to search every inch of that place. I do not want any surprises. If I know about the alien egg nest, I can nuke it from orbit before landing my colonists. So, okay, everything checks out. I'm landing my colonists. So, congratulations, you've landed your colonists on an alien world. You are now an invasive alien species. Yay. So, when you get there, what level of technology do you want to live at? I mean, you're not going to want to live rustic, right? You came from a spacefaring technology. Chances are you're going to want to continue on that way. What government type do you choose? You have a whole choice. Do you continue with communications from Earth? With communications, do you trade with Earth or other worlds, assuming there are? And trade is pretty interesting. I found this. You guys might know this guy, Paul Krugman. He wrote this typewritten report, 1978, and one of the topics he brings up in here is how would interest rates work? I'm an astronaut. I put a penny in the bank and I travel to another star for 10 years subjectively. I come back in 200 years. How much money do I get? How do you calculate interest for somebody who does not experience time the same way as money does? And he goes into stuff about tariffs and stuff. There's just a ton of stuff. But when it comes to interstellar trade, there's a lot more involved than just packing a ship with stuff and taking it to another star system. So, and this is something I would actually like to discuss with people, like the after meeting thing. Once you're there, are you still an Earthling? And if you are your kids? Wouldn't they be Centaurans at that point? And since you're 4 light years away from Earth now, are you going to start diverging physically and or culturally? Interesting question to consider. So one of the things that's been a trope of science fiction is, okay, well, we've got an environment that humans can't live in. Let's make it so that we can live in that. So genetic engineering, Star Trek had that with Khan. John Scalzi's Old Man War has brain transfer into a new body, as does Dennis E. Taylor's books. John Scalzi went so far as to create these gamarins, which are a subspecies of humans that were genetically engineered to live in space. Are they still human? Well, the one guy studies Shakespeare. But anyway, so we live at the dawn of the space age. And I truly hope the big wait for drive technology is short, and we live at a time when these new technologies will allow us to explore the stars. So traveling to interstellar space is difficult, all right, at our current level of technology and probably 1 or 2 levels beyond. It's dangerous. Space is not your friend. It tries to kill you. It's very resource intensive at whatever technology level you're talking about. It takes a lot of resources to do. It would likely require a globally coordinated effort. And how you all think that's going to work? So perhaps for now, we need to make sure all the life support systems on our current generation ship keep working properly as we all travel through interstellar space together. Thank you. I couldn't hear any laughs. I hope I got some laughs out of that.
It's okay.
I have one question for you.
Yes.
Say you're traveling toward this star, and you're in this ship of yours,
Mm-hmm.
and on Earth, which is now maybe 100 years older or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That it exceeds the capability of yours and passes you.
Oh yeah, I didn't put that in there. That was actually a concept in the book called Coyote.
Okay.
A colony ship went out, and 50 years later, a much faster colony ship was launched, beat them to the planet that they were going to colonize, and then they were treated as second-class citizens. So yeah.
It was humorous. Good.
That's actually a concept that I forgot what it was called. Basically, you shouldn't launch a ship unless you're sure that it can get there the next time, or else you should launch another ship.
How are you ever going to know? I mean, technology changes so fast. I mean, you can only launch with the best that you have at the time. It's like me waiting for the best computer. Eventually, I've got to buy the gaming computer because they'll just keep getting better.
Great job, Bob.
So I learned a lot out of this, and I knew a lot of this already, but my God, the energy requirements just floored me. And the fact that you've got to pretty much double it if you're going to slow down. And we don't have anything that can generate that kind of energy right now at all. Not even close.
You see the NASA's working in nuclear propulsion again?
On what?
Sorry, Parker, you're fading out. If you can move your microphone in closer.
You see NASA's working on nuclear propulsion again?
Nuclear propulsion?
Yeah.
Good.
And nuclear thermal rockets again.
But I don't think that technology is going to be able to get us to the stars, though. I mean, it might be able to accelerate us up, but the Daedalus thing that was pretty much, I believe, continuous acceleration, deceleration, which would give you a comfortable 1G on the way there and get you there in a reasonable amount of time. Versus Voyager, which is just coasting right now and is going to take 40,000 years to get anywhere.
Yeah.
But no matter how much power you have, you won't get there in what we would consider a reasonable amount of time because of the other factors you mentioned.
Well, yeah, the whole problem is Einsteinian sea space. You've got to deal with light speed, and you can't go faster than that. And when you get near it, space starts trying to hurt you.
Love it.
Bob, how far away from the Earth do you get before you turn on that nuclear drive?
Oh, probably very far. I would be well out past the moon because those things are going to create a torch which you'd be able to slice ships in half.
There is actually a way to launch a Project Orion from Earth without any nuclear fallout. Problem is you got to do it at the North Pole.
Well, you can just launch it with chemical rockets first, or build it in orbit before you launch
But then
it.
you lose half the point of it.
I don't think NASA engineers are going to design an Orion just to. We're going to launch it from the North Pole because it'll be fun to watch the explosions.
No, you launch it from the northern magnetic pole, and use a graphite launch pad. There's actually no fallout from it. So, yeah.
We like to launch near the equator so we can get some assist on our launch.
Yeah, but with Orion, you don't need that. That is the big advantage of Orion.
Oh my God. The first time I saw Scott Manley's Kerbal Space Program video on the Orion, I was on the floor rolling. I'm like, you can't be serious. And then I saw the testing they did in the 50s. Like, they were absolutely serious. And
Yeah, Orion makes sense.
They could have done that in the 60s.
Yeah, the whole system makes sense, honestly.
Jonathan, do we have any questions coming in from YouTube?
I don't see any so far. There's still 20 people watching.
question about the staging of this presentation. Did Bob? Did you plug your PowerPoint presentation into the network somehow?
I'm sorry.
Correct. I'm wondering. I'm wondering. Yes. Yes. I see. Just a USB connection into your.
No, it's coming from your computer. Everything is on your computer.
I see.
Or you can actually upload like a PowerPoint to WebEx, and then you can just page through it. That's what I did with those photos earlier.
Were you assisting him, Jonathan?
No,
He was controlling it.
actually, I think it seemed like when my audio glitched, everybody's audio glitched. So once I left and came back, all the audio came back. It was really weird. I don't understand what was going on there.
I'm just wondering, for future reference, if the virus doesn't clear up for the next 6 months, should we be making any provisions for future presentations?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, definitely for the next several months, but we'll figure it out. We'll need you to get a better webcam and a better microphone so that you can perform a song in case it's still going on in July or September rather. Hopefully we'll be back in person by then.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions for Bob?
Terrific, Bob.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Great as
Very
always.
entertaining.
This from the questions you're asking here, I can see a couple things I need to update in here, but that's awesome. I really enjoyed doing this, and there's so much more I could add to it. Holy mackerel!
Well, very fun, and if I may say so, I think that was a great way of tying in pop culture and sci-fi to actual science. So,
Gary Ross
kudos.
having a conniption.
Hey, I received an
State.
email from an unknown party telling me that he had tuned in, so you may get a missive or a letter to the WASP, perhaps.
Well, I mean, I don't really know how I can talk about conceptual drive technologies without referring to science fiction, because that's what they are.
Yes, indeed. I still think this solar system is awfully nice, and I'm not planning on going anywhere.
It won't be so nice in about 100 million years.
Well, fair enough.
I think we'll have literally gone somewhere before then, so not my problem.
Let's hope so.
Not my monkeys, not my circus.
Fusion generators would certainly change the game.
I think getting to Mars with people and having them survive there for a good length of time is going to be a great challenge, and some of that likely will happen in our lifetime. So it's nice to at least have that to look forward to.
Indeed.
And perhaps the moon.
Cheerio, everybody.
Any more questions for Bob? We don't have a hard ending here since there is no physical room to leave. So if you would like to hang on and chat, feel free.
So actually,
don't have to get out because the university is closing.
Oh, what's that, Jonathan?
So John Blum asked if we are virtually going to Redcoat Tavern when this is done.
I wish.
I don't know. I don't know if they're doing carryout, but I would strongly encourage you. You know, they really rely on our business. If you're in the Royal Oak area and you can do a safe carryout order or a delivery order from them, consider doing that this week since they didn't get our business tonight.
Indeed.
Let's see if they're on Uber or something.
Shedlowski here. Good seeing your friendly faces again.
Likewise, even if you're a little bit misty, we'll have to see you. We'll see you at quote unquote Macomb. So, and hopefully you'll be.
We're in a fog, Jim.
I have a new camera coming tomorrow.
I'm saying somebody says look like you're in a fog, right?
A broken camera. So
I get it.
We'll see you folks later. Great
Bye,
seeing you.
Jeremy.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
See you next week.
So.